Hi, I'm David Miller, and I'm here with number 7 in a series of mini-lectures on Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. Today we're turning to Volume 3, and we're going to return to a familiar topic, the symmetry of Volume 3. I don't know if anybody tried to repeat the earlier math experiment that we did, but page 187, I'm afraid, doesn't correspond to anything special. In this respect, I think the structure of the novel is like the first sentence that we took such a close look at. The balance and symmetry, they're there. They're sustained toward the end, but not in a simple way. They become more dynamic and variable. There are 2 moments in Volume 3 that do correspond to the turning points we previously located on pages 63 and 126. The first moment comes when Elizabeth studies Darcy's portrait at Pemberley. The second moment comes at the end of Volume 3 when Darcy repeats his proposal and Elizabeth accepts him, reversing her earlier refusal at the novel's midpoint. You remember when they danced at Netherfield, what Darcy said to Elizabeth? "I could wish, Miss Bennet, that you were not to sketch my character at the present moment, as there is reason to fear that the performance would reflect no credit on either." That was the closing chapter of Volume 1. Now, in the first chapter of Volume 3, we're told that Elizabeth stood several minutes before the picture in earnest contemplation, feeling a more gentle sensation towards the original than she ever has before. The finished portrait, then, recalls the mistaken first sketch, but transforms it completely. The second moment comes at the end of Volume 3 when Darcy repeats his proposal, and Elizabeth this time accepts him, reversing her earlier refusal. The main focus of the narrative throughout Volume 3 is on how we get from the earlier rejection to the culminating acceptance, and so to the happy ending signaled in the novel's final words, uniting them. That phrase refers, of course, to Darcy and Elizabeth, but it also signals the resolution in their marriage of the 3 contradictions that I earlier identified as central to the novel. Their marriage unites love with property and passion with judgment, the forces that must be allied for the companionate marriage to succeed. And it achieves this balance of opposites by coming as close as possible to a resolution of the contradiction between individuality and omniscience as Darcy and Elizabeth grow into a more mature understanding of themselves and each other. In Volume 1, you remember, there were 4 courtships. These are set off in Volume 3 by 3 couplings. The stories of the 2 secondary couples, Wickham and Lydia, Bingley and Jane, counterpoint the main action between Darcy and Elizabeth. Perhaps the best way to see this clearly is to trace the progress by which Lizzie and Darcy come together through the 5 principal movements of the action. We'll start on that today and follow it through the following 2 mini-lectures. Now, in order to make it clear how the main action in Book 3 completes an arc begun in Volume 2, it'll help if we back up just a bit. Here is a list of page references for the key steps Elizabeth goes through in changing her mind about Darcy. We start with the narrator's summary of how Elizabeth felt after rereading and taking in Darcy's letter. His attachment excited gratitude, his general character respect, but she could not approve him, nor could she for a moment repent her refusal or feel the slightest inclination ever to see him again. Look at the set of her jaw in that lower still capture there. She knows he's been right, but she still doesn't like him. This is a benchmark against which we can measure not just the change in her opinion of Darcy, which has already begun, now that his general character excites respect, but also the crucial change in her feelings toward him, which has not yet begun.
As to my objections to the marriage, the situation of your family, though objectionable, was nothing in comparison with the total want of propriety so frequently betrayed by your mother, your younger sisters, and even occasionally your father.
That will do extremely well, child. You have delighted us long enough.
Now there will be a great marriage. And you know that will throw the girls into the path of other rich men.
So in the progress of Elizabeth's change of heart, first the letter sinks in. Then there's a conversation with Jane in which Lizzie actually defends Darcy and blames Wickham. Then there's the conversation I discussed last time in which she tries to persuade her father not to let Lydia go to Brighton. Remember I said that Lizzie has changed her style and is starting to sound very much like Darcy's letter. This indicates that she's begun to internalize the letter, incorporating Darcy's style into her own, the way she had once done with her father's. It makes perfect sense that this process of internalizing the letter should lead Elizabeth to reassess her father more critically, for as she internalizes Darcy's judgment, she begins to gain more objectivity, more critical distance on her father's. In effect, she is unconsciously choosing Darcy as a substitute father, just as the wife in a patriarchal family is expected to do. Next time, we'll look at the first movement of Volume 3 to see how this reassessment develops when Elizabeth visits Darcy's estate at Pembroke.